Here's something kind of crazy. About 80% of us hold our breath or breathe shallow the second we sit down at a screen. There's even a name for it. In this episode, David and I get into breathwork, why the way most of us breathe is quietly working against us, what the research actually says, and one simple shift you can make today to calm your nervous system in just a few minutes. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Yoga Pod Class. I'm Kyle. This is a screen-free yoga podcast. Some weeks we guide you through practice, and other weeks we explore how patterns we notice on the mat show up in our daily lives.
And I'm David. Whether you're here for the movement or the meaning, we've got you covered. Thanks for being here. Let's dive in. Welcome back, everybody, to the Yoga Podcast, and thanks for joining our off-the-mat conversation. I got Kyle here with me, who just led us through a breathwork class, and I'm excited to dive into everything that we did together in that class and kind of where that all came from and what exactly is going on. But before getting into that, just wanted to remind everybody that we are going to Haramara, which is in Sayulita, Mexico, in March of 2027. There's a few spots left, so if you have any interest at all, head to yogapodclass.com, and under the retreats tab, you can see all the information about the 2027 retreat. Kyle, loved the decision to go with the breathwork class.
Yeah,
Tell me more about where that came from and what inspired that, because it is kind of a little bit of a deviation from what we've been doing the last few months.
Yeah, well, one, I think we got a request for some breath work, and so I wanted to tap into that, and I thought it was a good idea. You know, I think that breath work is important. I think it's something that I know you do more of than I do, but also I think that, I don't know, work has been a little bit stressful lately. Has some things going on in personal life, and it has helped. Even if it's just a little bit, it's helped me, and so I wanted to be able to share that a little bit as well with other people.
I love that, and I think it's such an overlooked part of the yoga practice and overlooked part of life. If there's one thing we're always doing, it's breathing, and whether that's just in day-to-day life or especially in the yoga practice, and intentional breathing is such a part of everything we do within yoga. So I think it was absolutely relevant for us to start talking about that on the podcast.
I had a yoga teacher once say that breathing is the most important thing that we do, and if you don't believe me, try not doing it for 5 minutes. I like that because it really is. It is by far the most important thing we do, and I think that most of us make our way through most of our day without thinking about it, but it has such an impact on our nervous system, on how we think and how we feel. And I think most of us probably don't breathe right as well. We breathe up into our chest, right? And if we can train ourselves to breathe a little bit deeper, I think that we probably see some changes there.
Yeah, well, let's start there. I can remember growing up, and in the first time I was really made aware of my breath, I feel was when I was a child, trying to process emotions, and in school or whatever it may be, you'd always hear things like, oh, when you get upset, just take 10 breaths, just breathe,
Or take a deep breath, right? Yeah,
exactly. So I guess, what was your first introduction to breathing like that, and why do you think that's kind of instilled in us at such a young age?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to that. I think that I remember hearing that when I was young as well. Just take a few deep breaths, and even as an adult, I think that when we're learning to manage stress or challenging situations or whatever, it really is just take a few deep breaths, take 10 deep breaths. And what's, I think, interesting is that in and of itself doesn't necessarily work, but it also, if we do it wrong, it could actually do the opposite of what we want it to. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting, there was a study that was done and it had 12 randomized controls and 785 adults. And in that, they found that that correct, mindful breathing and done kind of the right way reduced stress, anxiety, and depression significantly more than the control group that wasn't practicing any breath at all. And so yeah, and part of it too is what type of breath activates the nervous system and what type of breath activates the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system.
So a few times there you said, the right type of breath.
Yeah.
Say more to that, because I think it's really easy to hear like, oh, I'm breathing. What's the difference? How could I be
Right.
breathing wrong?
Right. So, I mean, I think that as it pertains to using a breath to calm us down, the a longer exhale slows your heart rate and activates your parasympathetic nervous system because it acts on the vagus nerve, where a longer inhale increases heart rate. And so it then activates the sympathetic nervous system. And so if we just take a full breath in, and I think that very easy, if we take a really full breath in, it's easier to like do a quick breath out, right? That exhale is always
Just like
a little
a
bit
sigh,
faster.
that quick
Yeah.
sigh.
Yeah. Then we could be actually, you know, doing the opposite of what we wanted to do. Whereas if we take a regular breath in and then a longer breath out, that's going to help actually calm us down.
Yeah. Takes a lot of real, intentionality to slow it down and to actually do that, because I think it's so easy and common times. Most people just value the inhale. It's like, just take a deep and a full breath in. Okay, I'm good. Yep, I'm good. And,
Right?
and
There you
actually
go.
what you did is you just heightened yourself. You just activated yourself a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah,
So what did you
once I really got into, I mean, like I teach that breathing exercise many times. Like I do that before Shavasana a lot in my yoga classes, and you can feel the difference, like especially after a practice, and then you move through a breathing exercise like that. And I knew that it worked, I think, just kind of intuitively, but it wasn't until I kind of actually started looking into some research. It's like, oh, there's actually science behind this. It's not just mysticism. It's not just kind of, fluffy, breathing. There's actually studies that were done and actually science that backs all this up. It's pretty interesting.
For those who didn't do your class, the breathwork class, first of all, they should go give it a try at some point in the next week or so. But
Like
can you
7 minutes or something like that. Yeah.
yeah, it's a really quick one. But for those of you that haven't done it yet and are listening, can you just go through quickly what it is, the exercise?
Yeah. It's just a 4 count inhale through your nose and then a 7 count exhale through your mouth, kind of like you're blowing out through a straw. And we move through it a few times where it's a little bit more guided and I'm counting for you, and then I slowly start to back off and let you move through it on your own. And then we pause, check in with how we feel, move through it one more time. So again, I think it's like it ends up being about 5 to 7 minutes. I don't remember specifically, but yeah. So
So
that's
this
the
this specific breathing exercise is designed to activate the parasympathetic, the rest, the digest, the relaxation part of
yes.
your brain.
Yep, absolutely.
Got it. So when you first started to hear about breathing exercise and all these things, what was your like kind of knee-jerk reaction? Was it something that you liked or believed in, or I think you touched on a little bit like, oh, this isn't fluffy. There's actual
Yeah.
science here backing this up.
Yeah, I remember when I first started doing it in yoga classes and things like that, especially like after like a hot yoga class, or what used to be Bikram before that all what happened there. But you do the do you remember the name of it? But either way,
Yeah, Kapalabhati, the skull shining
yeah,
breath.
yeah. I was like, what is this? And I don't know. And I remember some teachers doing the alternate nostril breathing. And when I first started yoga, I think I was a little bit more skeptical of it, and I really didn't understand it. But like a lot of other philosophies, a lot of other techniques, a lot of other things that accompany yoga, over time, I've really understood why they were studying this thousands of years ago and why they thought it was so important.
Yeah.
Now, what about
Yeah.
you? What was your take on it initially versus where you're at today?
That's a good question. As we were talking about this and planning for this, I was kind of thinking back to like what was my first introduction to intentional breathing. And I mentioned the example of growing up as a kid, but then getting into yoga, it was like, okay, this ujjayi breath, this is really kind of challenging.
Right.
It
Yeah.
builds
Right. Yeah.
it builds heat from the inside out and all that. And I find this to be hard, but I definitely noticed this one. This one's doing something to me. I noticed the internal heat building. And then there was the skull shining breath, Kapalabhati in the hot class. It's like, okay, this to me, I very clearly feel like I'm kind of extinguishing the flame that I built. I'm releasing the heat as I do it. You mentioned alternate nostril breathing, and I was kind of like, what? This one, okay, this one, yes, I'm breathing intentionally and I'm slowing down, but is something actually happening here?
Yeah.
And I guess I definitely had a lens of skepticism before, really, really diving in and exploring these things.
Yep. Yep. Awesome.
Yeah, so you mentioned getting nervous, but even before teaching classes, you've been teaching
Yeah.
yoga for like 20 years. I almost said 200 years. For like 20, for
I
like
look
20 years.
good. I think. I mean, I'm not gonna brag. I look good for a 200-year-old.
You really do. You really do. But when did you first notice that like, the breath really does help me kind of calm down and relax as I head into a situation that kind of makes me a little nervous?
I think it actually wasn't until I think more recently, maybe the past or maybe 5 years or so, that I've understood the importance of using the breath going into a situation. And I think that that's because I feel like I've gained more self-awareness as, maybe like from 38 on. But I think before that, where it kind of helped was after a situation. So after an argument, after a stressful situation, things like that where I'm walking away and I'm feeling really activated and the heart rate's up, or, I'm spinning or, whatever, not spinning, like, yeah, like my mind is spinning or whatever, then I think then I was able to catch myself and say, okay, let's breathe here. Let's calm down. Let's, start to be rational. Let's understand how I'm feeling, that type of stuff. Whereas I think, again, now later on in my adult life, I think I've gained a little bit more self-awareness where I can say, okay, I'm starting to feel activated. I know I'm going into a stressful situation. I'm nervous to walk into this yoga class, whatever it might be, and then just work through it from that standpoint. So being a little bit more kind of proactive, I would say.
Is the 4 count inhale through the nose, 7 count exhale through pursed lips, is that the breath that you kind of first found that was working for you, and is that the one you reach for in those moments, would you say?
Actually, I mean, now I reach for it, but at the time, I don't remember when I first learned that. And actually, what's interesting is, side note, is that even a more effective way of doing that breath would be an 8 count exhale. I was after a post class, I was doing some deep dives, and it's a 1-to-2 ratio that actually is best for activating the parasympathetic nervous system. But anyway, I think that I didn't really learn that technique maybe until I think it was kind of like just before COVID times or something like that. So it hasn't been very long. I think that before that it was deep breathing. So I don't know, maybe my body did it naturally or something like that, but it was just slowing down the breath.
Got it.
So what about you, David? Are there any breathing techniques or things that you use outside of pranayama, which we know we use a lot in the studio, either on a daily basis or in challenging times or times where you need to like just calm down?
Yeah, funny enough, I actually kind of use breath work for a little bit of a different, kind of the opposite approach of calming down. Is I utilize breath work for kind of upregulating myself and kind of when I need to gain some energy. I do it in the morning every day when I wake up. I've been doing Wim Hof breathing on a regular basis since like 2019. I went to a workshop. It was actually like a handstand workshop, funny enough. And at the end of the workshop, the teacher was like, "Okay, we're gonna do this Wim Hof breathing."
Yep.
And for those of that don't know about Wim Hof breathing, it's basically like a controlled hyperventilation of like a full breath in and then you just let it go. So it's it's kind of like we talked about at the beginning of the episode. It's like big breath in, sigh it out quick. So it is that longer inhale, shorter exhale, activating the sympathetic nervous system, getting us going a little bit more. And then after about 30 of those breaths, you exhale fully and you hold on empty. And a big part of this is to kind of have this long breath retention. And I can't necessarily speak to all the science of what's going on, but the one thing that I know for sure is I felt it. Like I was like, oh,
All right.
this
Yeah.
is very clearly doing something to me, and it's absolutely an activating feeling. So I started doing that in the mornings, and I really haven't stopped doing it since then. So
Okay.
that's kind of
I
been
remember
my
that's kind of when it started becoming popular too, like right around
yep.
that time. I remember, yeah, seeing kind of a lot about that at the time. And you know what? I don't do it regularly. I know you do, but the times that I did it, I definitely noticed it. But I think I noticed it because I was hyperventilating,
Yeah.
which is very activating.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of claims that goes with it that I don't know if there's any science that back it up. So I think that's part of what got a little bit of a cult following. I'm not even going to get into all that because, again, I don't know how valid those claims are. But that was kind of my introduction into breath work and kind of where I really started to know, I was like, oh, wow, there's really something here. And then from there, I started to just get into, I would start to look up YouTube videos of upregulating breath work, and it's something that I find myself coming to in the morning. It's something I find myself coming to after lunch. Like, I'm the type of person that I get really tired after I eat in the middle of the workday, and breath work is a way that I kind of try to overcome that feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for
Yeah.
sharing.
So let's talk a little bit about what's actually happening here. We've talked a lot about the exhale kind of being the thing that calms us down, and the inhale gets us going or wakes us up a little bit. And I
Yep.
know you've done some good research this past like week or two. So what have you kind of found? What's really happening there with the inhales and exhales?
Yeah. So, the thing that I found most interesting was, and this is all backed up with research and science and things like that, is that slow breathing was associated with an increased heart rate variability, which is good. But that helps to again activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's the rest and digest nervous system. So that's what we want to fall into, during the evening and things like that. So and the primary part was that longer exhale. So the slow breathing then activates that, while faster breathing, kind of like what you're doing, or the
Hmm.
longer inhale, then starts to activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is kind of, it's what we step into during fight or flight, but it's also that more aware, awake, activated kind of state.
Very commonly you hear everyone say things like take a deep breath, when they're trying to
Yeah.
have you calm down. Is that technically wrong or inaccurate then?
I wouldn't say it depends on how you do it, right? I think that the longer inhale, shorter exhale does the opposite of what we want to. So if taking a deep breath is taking a deep breath out, then that might be a good solution. However, if we're taking a deep breath and holding it, and we're constricting things and things like that, that actually could probably do the opposite of what we wanted to as well.
Hmm.
And so, again, if we're activating the sympathetic nervous system, right, that's kind of the fight or flight nervous system, that's the activated nervous system. We could unintentionally be doing that by taking a deep breath in and a shorter breath out. Kind of that's the Wim Hof, right? The big breath in and all these really short exhales.
Hmm.
And what that can do is increase the carbon dioxide in our blood. And so that's why you might feel like a little dizzy or a little lightheaded, things like that. And so I don't think that take a deep breath is necessarily wrong, but are there probably better ways to do it? Yes. At the end of the day, too, to be honest, I think that if you can pause during a challenging situation, or during a situation to at least just pause, that's probably a step in the right direction. And even if it is the wrong type of breath, or an activating breath or something.
I think it's interesting when I think about like how this shows up in the yoga practice. I've been trying
Yeah.
to speak to this a lot lately, where because as we're working out, the inhale feels better than the exhale. At least that's my
Right,
personal
because we're getting
preference.
oxygen, right? Like
Yeah,
we're working out, especially in power yoga, and so that oxygen feels really good.
right. And that can very quickly turn into big inhale, short exhale, big inhale, short exhale. So what I've been really encouraging my students to do, especially in in-person classes where it's heated, is like lean into lengthening the exhale. And I know it's challenging, but when you do that, it's causing you to recover so much faster. But that's almost like a whole different muscle to build in itself.
It is, but then I think also as teachers, we need to provide that space to do that. Like, can somebody do that in prayer twist? Probably not, because already you're breathing into your chest and not into your diaphragm and not into your belly because that area is compressed and one side of your body's compressed too. Anyway, but, do we let them sit for a second and do a few long exhales, or are we asking them to do it in Warrior 2 when we know it's virtually impossible? I don't know. I think that it's important to kind of consider where we're weaving that into class.
Yeah, one of the spaces that I've find myself peppering it in the most is when we're in a intense pose, like let's say frog pose, for example.
Ah, yes.
A really intense hip stretch where it's not a big exertion. You can breathe there in that pose pretty well. When we learn how to lengthen our exhales by activating the parasympathetic nervous system, it's like telling your body and your brain, like, hey, I'm okay here. I'm okay. I'm safe in this sensation.
Yeah.
And then you're able to maintain where you are, or even maybe find a little bit more space to deepen.
Absolutely, yeah, because I think your body's also then relaxing into it, and I'm always a fan of finding depth through softening rather than depth through kind of forcing, in the physical practice. So I think that sounds like a really great place to weave that in. One of the other things that I wanted to mention here is that regarding the longer exhale, this was another study where they worked with 111 participants, and they did 3 different types of breath works, and some mindful meditation for 5 minutes a day for just 1 month. And the winner was the exhale focused, like cyclical sighing out. This kind of what we're talking about: shorter inhale, longer exhale. And along with that, they found greater improvement in its mood and bigger reduction in respiratory rate than the other techniques. And so, again, science backs all of this up with research and with lots of studies. But this is kind of where the study found that a 1-to-2 ratio in the breath was the most effective. So 4 count inhale, 8 count exhale.
Interesting. And again, when you say winner in that study, does that mean that what was kind of that quote unquote winning metric that they were measuring?
Yep. Decreased respiratory rates, and I think that was the biggest one. Decreased respiratory rates, lower heart rate.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Yeah, that totally makes sense. When it comes to, I guess, getting away from fitness or the on the mat, the yoga on the mat, or wherever, we notice like high stress situations physically, taking it to off the mat a little bit. Where are there places where you catch yourself, or where people might not necessarily notice that they're kind of holding their breath, or taking themselves out of a breath practice?
Yeah, good question. I think, okay, so one place that I really notice it is while I'm training my new dog, because it's a little stressful. She has puppy energy. She's smart and stubborn. And I notice, like, when she's not listening or when another dog goes by and she's freaking, I am holding my breath. And it because it's stressful. But what I've actually kind of thought about recently here is I need to meet her with, this is kind of a yoga philosophy too, is meet her with a little bit more contentment, like just being content with where she's at, wanting to change, but accepting where she's at in this moment. She's in puppy mode. She's excited, whatever. But as soon as I can take a couple breaths and calm down, I notice that reaction in her too. She's just a little bit more calm. She breathes just a little bit better. There's less tension in the leash. And so it's interesting. The dogs, I think, really do pick up on this. But then I notice that I respond better to her. I notice it when I'm in meetings, when I'm being asked questions that maybe I don't, know the answers to. Um, I notice it in challenging conversations. Yeah. There's quite a few times where once I've really started noticing it, I notice it. It happens kind of a lot. Yeah. How about with you? Is there anywhere that you kind of notice yourself doing that?
Yeah, definitely. But before that, I'm just the part
Sure.
about Sophie, your pup, and training her. What I
Yeah.
think so interesting is dogs are always watching you and reading you and reacting to how your physical state is. And I'm sure there's an energetic thing that they can feel. You know, dogs are
They
so
can even
smart.
smell it. I was reading, they can actually smell stress. So like
Of
they know it.
Totally. But
Yeah.
when you get your breath out of your chest, if you think about if you're kind of like you're breathing into your chest, you're kind of like amped up, when you can calm down, elongate those exhales, your whole physical like appearance and presentation changes. So, I'm sure that she also notices that when you're able to kind of
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
chill out a little bit, she sees that in you and then she can also, calm down and chill out a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
But yeah, so areas I notice it in my life, I think the few examples you gave, I especially liked the work one where you're in a
Mm,
meeting and someone asks you something and you don't know the answer to it.
yeah.
That's one where it's just kind of like I feel like my eyes get all big and I start like just bugging out a little bit, and it's really easy to like hold your breath or to breathe quickly or something along those lines.
Hmm.
And difficult conversations whenever I get into a discussion with a loved one or my partner or something like that, I notice that my breath can get short and I can start to get hot,
Mm,
and it all kind of goes hand in hand and goes together, and I think it's something that I've gotten a lot better at the last couple years as I've learned more about breathing is when I find myself in a hard conversation. And the nice thing, the wonderful thing about this is you can just like breathe a long breath out your nose without anyone needing to notice or
yeah.
hear
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's a very subtle shift. It's not like you need to like go off in another room and do some Wim Hof breathing or anything like
Right.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it can it can be this really gentle, subtle shift, which makes all the world and the difference to the mental state.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Speaking of holding your breath, there is a NPR kind of special. And I think you can actually find it on TED Radio Hour podcast. But Linda Stone did this series called Body Electric, and it is a fascinating series. It talks about how technology is having an impact on our bodies, and it's just there's so much that we don't realize is happening because of technology. That yeah, it's an interesting series. If I recommend y'all checking it out, but one of the things they identified here was something they called screen apnea. And so what they found out was that about 80% of people hold their breath or breathe really shallow while they're working on a screen. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, especially because I would say the majority of people are working on a screen or just looking at a screen for the
Right.
majority of their day.
Right. And what they found is like they're emailing or they're inhaling in a lot of anticipation, and they're not getting that full exhale. And so, but what was also kind of fascinating, and think about this, is that the only people within this group of people that they tested that did not do that still continued to maintain a steady breath were military test pilots, a triathlete, and a professional performer, kind of like a dancer or singer. And these people are trained to breathe in stressful situations or through like a triathlete, obviously breathing through all the exercise that they do. So just something else to kind of be conscious of is when you're in front of a screen, can you be a little bit more conscious of your breath?
It's so interesting to hear you say that because I'm one of the people that sits at a screen sending emails all day,
Oh, me
and it's
too.
so
Yeah.
interesting while I'm doing something. I feel like I'm always like as I'm going to exert, I'm almost like taking a big breath in and then just like typing, 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 and then it's like, okay, send.
Yeah. Yeah. I notice I clench my jaw more when I'm working, and I feel
Mm,
like even like breathing through, regular, like more intentional breathing would probably help with that a little bit. And my dentist would be happy too.
right, right. Do you ever notice that your breath's kind of like telling you a story before your brain notices it?
Hmm. No, I don't think I've gotten to the point where I recognize a disruption in my breathing pattern that signifies a state that I'm about to move into. I do notice it more in my body though.
Mm, mm-hmm.
I feel it like I feel it kind of like I like for instance, when I know I'm going to say something that I regret, I feel it in my throat.
Oh
That
yeah.
like when I'm about to say something, passive aggressive, I'm about to say something snappy, like I'm about to you know, say something I might regret later, I feel it in my throat. And so again, as an adult, I've kind of like gotten that better awareness so that I feel it and then I can take a deep breath and then I can move out of it and then I can approach that situation with a little bit more, you know, I don't know,
Yeah,
intention, I suppose.
absolutely. That's the throat chakra. I think that's
Yeah, I
Vishuddha,
know,
right?
right? That's my throat chakra being like, "Hey, something's about to happen." The red
Listen,
light starts
listen to me.
blinking.
Listen to me.
Yeah, yeah. But then I think before my breath gets shallow, I feel it kind of in my gut a little bit. I kind of feel like the butterflies, and then even up into my chest. So yeah, my body feels it before I think I notice it in the breath. However, it very well could be that the breath has already changed by that point.
Yeah. What I think's interesting is breath work. I think it's become very popular in the last,
Yeah.
since like COVID, basically since we talked about. I think Wim
Hmm.
Hof's been a huge part of that, but just like breath work in general, there are like breath work centers and events opening up
Yeah.
everywhere I look. I'm curious. I think it's another one of those things that we kind of use as like this like big general band-aid that we just like slap on everything. You were
Yep.
mentioning all those signs and things you were feeling in your body. I don't think that just like, hey, just do some breath work. Just go sit
No.
down and do the 4 count inhale, 8 count exhale
No.
exercise and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
So speak to that a little bit. When is breath work not enough for you, and what else could you turn to in those times?
Man, I think there's lots of times that it doesn't. But what I kind of remind myself of, and I think I remind people in yoga too, is that if you can use the breath to even calm yourself, center yourself, or in your case, activate, when necessary, even just like if it just helps you like 5% more, then that's
Mm-hmm.
5% more than you had before. And I always say little by little, a little becomes a lot, right? So if you're doing that and you're stepping into nature and you're moving your body and you're leaning into community and you're talking to your best friend, now all of these little things are there to help in challenging situations.
Yeah.
And I know I keep leaning into challenging situations. And I know the breath work is also available for the activation, I think, but the kind of my framework right now is kind of what we taught this last week. But for instance, it's like when I was going through the grief with Lucy, like there was no breathing that was going to get me through that,
Right. It's a good
you know?
example.
And like I was almost in a car accident that was not my fault. And it's like that last, I don't know if when that happens, that lasts with you for a while after, as you're still driving and you're still like your heart rate is, pounding, your heart's pounding. Same thing there. It's like, yeah, I took a few deep breaths, but it still took a little while for my nervous system to actually calm down. So I think there's a lot of situations in which breathing just isn't enough. But can it help a little bit and is a little bit better than nothing? Yeah, absolutely.
I liked what you said about, I think it was like spending time in community or with friends and getting out
Yeah.
in nature. A lot of the times it is I can kind of treat breath work as like this band-aid of like, oh, I'm tired, so I'm just gonna do breath work and push through. And it's like, oh, you know what? I could actually just really use a good night of sleep. That would actually
Maybe you just need a nap.
right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Kyle, as we start to wrap things up here, what is one breathwork practice that you're actually going to try this week? and that you would recommend that I try and our audience tries as well?
Um, I'm gonna keep doing this 4 count inhale, but I'm gonna extend it to an eight count exhale. And one of the things that I actually just kind of dawned on me as I've been waking up for some reason between like 2 or 3 in the morning every morning, and I don't know why. Like I wake up, I'm awake, and I just lay there for a while, and I think I start thinking about the day ahead, and I don't know what's going on, but I'm gonna incorporate it into those moments and see if that helps me maybe get back to sleep a little bit easier.
Would you recommend that's how we try it? Is when we're trying to like turn down a little bit or maybe laying in bed at night?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Like again, parasympathetic, right? Rest and digest. So 4 in, 8 out, nice and slow. Again, will help just a little bit.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All
How
right.
about
Well,
you?
I look
Is there like when do you see yourself using that?
that specific breath. I'd say exactly when you mentioned it is specifically for going to bed at night. Luckily, I do have a pretty easy time falling asleep, but in those moments where I can't, I do turn to. I don't really end up counting. I just try to like make a long
Yeah.
exhale. Is
Yeah.
kind of what I do when I
Yeah,
need
that's
it.
probably enough, right? That's probably enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
All right. Well, Kyle, thank you again for a wonderful breathwork class this past week. It's definitely something that I'll be turning to a few more times, not just this week, but as time goes on, because it's such a nice, quick, and easy thing to weave into the day when we need it. I'll be
yeah,
back with us.
I'm going to come back to your
Yeah.
question. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you again.
No,
One
please.
thing, the other thing I'm going to do this week is be more conscious of how I'm breathing when I'm working and when I'm in front of a screen,
Mm-hmm.
and
I'll commit.
even to just like find a little bit longer inhale and exhale. Just be more intentional about that in front of the screen and see what that's like.
Yeah. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. All right.
Well, next week I'll be back teaching a class for us. Probably going to be another flow style class. But TBD on exactly what that'll be. But I look forward to practicing with y'all next week.
All right. Thanks for being here, everybody.